Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, everyone. I am Rabbi Jenny Greenspan for Congregation Beth-El here in Indianapolis. And we this morning will be doing our Torah Talk on Parashat Shoftim, a Torah portion into the book of Deuteronomy called Shoftim or Judges. So we'll give a couple of moments for anyone who would like to log on and to join us. Good morning, Shabbat Shalom to Mickey Ashworth. So good to see you every week. And we are, if you are using a red Etz Chaim Chumash, I will be on page 1095. And if you're using the PDF available on our website, it should be the same page, because just scroll on through. I'm a little past the halfway mark in the Torah portion if you're scrolling through the PDF, page 1095. And if you're going to follow along from a different Chumash or a different Torah text, I will be on Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 13 will be the verse that I focus on the most this morning. But so far, good morning again. Shabbat Shalom to Mickey Ashworth. Good morning, Alan Hamburger, and to Miles Siegel and to Phyllis Luger. Shabbat Shalom. So good to see you all, and any others who might be joining you from home. It's so nice to have a little bit of a morning gathering and Torah talk, even in this way. I want to say Shabbat Shalom and welcome. So this morning's Torah portion I mentioned is Parashat Shoftim, which means judges. And so the opening part of this Torah portion is largely setting up what it should look like once the Israelites enter into the land of Israel and it's time for them to set up a society. And so it's called judges because they're told to appoint judges or leaders, really, over each of the tribes and kind of set up a structure where authority can answer to one another. So one person was Moses before they'd enter the land, but now we're preparing to enter the land, wouldn't have to take on all of the burden of leadership on his or her own. So that is a lot of what the opening part of this Torah portion is talking about, is ways to make a just society. This Torah portion does include the famous verse, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue, and is the motto of Beth-El Tzedek. So it's an important portion for us in that way. It also contains rules for if we were to appoint a king in the land of Israel, which we do end up doing, David, Solomon, Saul before David and Solomon, what rules might apply to that person. They're told to keep a Torah on hand at all times, one that they have written themselves and one that is the one that they inherited, as the commentators point out. It's the balance between the history and the reality of the current moment, and a leader is supposed to keep both of those things in mind. And so there's a lot going on to set up society in chapter 17, and it's definitely worth a look if you'd like to read through it and study it with a friend or a loved one. But I want to get us started with the recognition that this month, we are now in the Hebrew month of Elul. Yesterday was Rosh Chodesh Elul, the first of that month. And this is the month that leads up to the high holidays. And on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, we are meant to imagine ourselves standing before God in a process of teshuvah, standing before the divine, ready to return to being our best selves. So I'll say Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Marty Lip and to Jim Roth. I'm so glad you are here. And I want us to focus on one particular verse tucked into this portion that is all about a larger society and leadership, and yet there's this one little tucked in verse about each of us individually. So I would like us to go to chapter 18, verse 13. If you are following either in an Etz Chaim Chumash, either in physical or in PDF form, I'm again on page 1095. And if you're using a different Chumash, Deuteronomy 18, chapter 18, verse 13. Tamim tihiyeh im Adonai Elohecha. You should be wholehearted with Adonai, your God. And this verse appears in a small section where the people are told not to go astray, not necessarily after other gods, though that's something that's mentioned a lot in the book of Deuteronomy, but to not start to trust sorcery and divination and soothsayers, but to actually trust in God and trust in self. And then tucked in is this: you must be wholehearted with Adonai, your God. I think this is a very poignant verse to come at the very beginning of Elul, while we prepare for the high holidays. Because on the high holidays, when we are entering into the process of tshuva, we are also meant to be wholehearted in some way. I'll also point out, and I want to say, I need to acknowledge and say thank you to the Jewish Studio Project in Berkeley, California for bringing this verse to my attention and a couple of the commentaries that I'm going to share and interpret with us here as well. So I want to acknowledge the learning that Rabbi Adina Allen of the Jewish Studio Project helped me do and helped me share with you. Because she points out that tamim, this word that I've translated as wholehearted, and if you look into the Etz Chaim Chumash, the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society, has also used wholehearted, which is where this translation has come from, for the word tamim. But it can also be translated as just whole, maybe not wholehearted, but a whole self. It could mean entire, all of you. It could mean intact, meaning a not broken form of you, unobjectionable, a form of you that no one could have any objection to, or free of blemish or blameless, a perfect self, or perhaps sincere and honest. That when we appear before God, we must be sincere and honest with ourselves. When perfect in knowledge of self. And suddenly, if wholehearted wasn't a big enough ask, that suddenly seems like an even bigger ask to me. To be completely sincere and honest with the divine, wholehearted, blameless, just completely there and open. And so then we have to wonder, what does it mean to be wholehearted and blameless and sincere with God? So let's go back a few weeks to Parashat Ve'etchanan, or really just back into our Sidur, to Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol lebavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha. That verse should sound very familiar to any who spends any time in services with us. You will love Adonai your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your might. And all of your heart is in here. And we said tamim could mean wholehearted. The Hebrew in Ve'ahavta for your heart is levavcha. There's two vets. You could just say lev, heart, but it seems to be doubled. And so the sages of the Mishnah point out that the doubled vet, the doubled letter vet, means that we maybe have two hearts. That we have a Yetzer HaTov heart, our good inclination heart, and a Yetzer Hara heart, our bad inclination, our shadow self heart. So perhaps when we're told tamim, to be tamim before Adonai our God for the high holidays, we're not expected to actually be perfect and blemishless, but rather to have found a way to perfectly integrate our whole selves, our best selves and our worst selves, and to be at tamim. We'll point out the word tam, also the singular form of the word tamim, is used to describe our forefather Jacob, and is often translated as he's simple, he's calm, he's a perfect kind of person, he stays in the tents. Ish tam ba'ohalim. He's a tam person in his tents. And yet Jacob, we know, if we read the rest of his story, is someone who makes mistakes, is someone who hurts people close to him. He steals the birthright from his brother. He lies to his father about it. And later Jacob becomes Yisrael, the God struggler, the one who is our greatest forefather, whom we refer to ourselves as Bnei Yisrael, as the children of Israel. And so tam doesn't always mean a perfect person. It means a person who finds a way to integrate his mistakes and her mistakes, her struggles and his misdeeds all back into who that person is. So when we stand before God, we are tamim, two forms of tam. It's a one of these words that doesn't actually have to be plural, but appears here plural, much like panim, face, or chayim, life, are words that even the singular noun form are shown as plural. And here tamim is an adjective, not a noun, but it's still a plural when it need not be. And so the integration of our whole hearts, our good hearts, our bad hearts, our good selves, our shadow selves, seem to come together when we are to be before God. That we should find the way to be before God, confess our mistakes, and acknowledge our successes. We should think about integrating what we have done into who we are, and so we can make better possibilities of the future in front of us. So I invite us, as we begin our approach to the high holidays and here in the month of Elul to be striving to integrate our whole selves, our Yetzer Hatov heart, our good inclination heart, our Yetzer Hara heart, our evil inclination, our bad inclination, perhaps just our shadow self heart, into one person so that we can integrate all of what we are into who we are before God, so that we can strive to be an even better version of ourselves as we move into a year ahead. I'm sure that 5781, which we are approaching, will be a year full of joys, and it'll be a year full of struggles. We've had a hard year so far, and it will take healing. And so this year, as we approach high holidays, may we integrate what we need to heal from, what we've done right and wrong, and be able to make 5781 a year full of blessings ahead of us. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that we can all find our ways to be tamim, pure, wholehearted, good and bad, all integrated as we move into our years ahead. So Shabbat Shalom, and welcome in Shabbat Shalom to my mom and to Carol Steinfeld, to Margot May, and to Jim Borman. Shabbat Shalom. So good to see everybody, and I will see you all next week. Please do join us for our live streamed service. You can just go to bez613.org to see the live streamed Shabbat morning service with myself and with Cantor Melissa Cohen. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Shabbat Shalom.